you're actually using your connection. And why I call them typically community wireless networks rather than free is that ultimately, if you're getting out to the regular internet, someone owns the connections, the lines that that information travels over, Sprint, Qwest, et cetera, and they're all toll roads. So if you're providing free access, somebody is paying for it, which is why you need to approach, if you want to provide free access to the internet, you're going to need to approach some kind of sponsor to pay for those costs. In the Detroit project, what we had worked out was there was actually, Qwest was running a promotion on their business T1s that existing T1 customers could get a second T1 for free. And the customers were initially saying, well, why do we only need one T1, why do we want to get a second one? And so basically Qwest, the regional Qwest technical sales officer and one of our representatives would mutually approach businesses and say, well, if you get the second T1 and donate the bandwidth to the wireless project, we're 501(c), and you can take it off on your taxes. And instantly, it's a win-win situation for everyone because the business gets the recognition of supporting a community program, they get money off on their taxes, Qwest sells more, which they like, and we get bandwidth for what we want to do. And those are typically the kind of agreements that you need to be flexible enough and willing to work out in order to get what you want done. In the Champaign-Urbana project, particularly in the beginning, we used to joke that our motto was, we have no budget, because at each meeting on Sunday afternoons, we would typically have 2 or 3 new people show up and be interested in the project, and they would be just bubbling over with all kinds of new ideas. And we would say, these are, honestly, we really like your ideas. These are really good ideas. And we would love to, at least take at least some of them and implement them, but we have no budget. We're running this network on old PCs, on routers that we can buy with our own paychecks, and free software, and basically spit and bubble gum. So, like a lot of projects, you learn to just scrounge and do with what you can. And as far as the actually the model I like to call it is that you're essentially running your network like maybe PBS or NPR, although that you have sponsorship at the beginning of a session, if they with a splash page or that sort of thing. Typically, people are willing to put up with that, or if you're getting a direct grant from somebody, rather than like some of the commercial wireless operators that want to constantly put some kind of flashing ad window up there, or like the old Net Zero or that sort of thing. As far as topologies of the network, there's this, the mesh topology that I talked about earlier, or you can also, depending on this works in very well, typically in very flat terrain, like Champaign-Urbana. It works less well, and the thing about terrain is it's not just the physical geography, it's also whatever artificial geography is there. Like if you're in a city with lots of buildings, they count as mountains and canyons as far as 2.4 gigahertz is concerned. So, and you can, if you can get access to the roof, you can use that to your advantage. If you want to do a single point to multi-point network, which is typically, if you've got a very tall building, single omnidirectional antenna here with a coverage area, something like that, and then you can have multiple hosts with directional antennas pointing at it. Now, this is easy to implement, or easier to implement than it has the problem of if you have a hardware failure here, the whole network goes down. So, I mean, I tend to like granted it's what I worked on, but I tend to like the Champaign-Urbana model of router on the roof and then another access point inside, because it gets you around interference issues and the problem that most buildings are opaque to the wavelengths you're going to be using. Um, As far as if you wanted to start your own project, which is probably the third part of the abstract I talked about, you need to first look at what I would call the social or perhaps the political organization of your group. In Champaign-Urbana, which is still a very successful community wireless initiative, we started out with a conscious effort in anarcho-syndicalism, which we boiled down to one simple rule. First of all, everyone is welcome at the meetings, but if you suggest something, congratulations, you just volunteered to do it. If you think we need a website, congratulations, you're the webmaster on it. If you think our current website, guess what? You can redesign it. This turns out to be a very, very effective tool for managing people in the sense that, first of all, you have the iterative nature of volunteers who are enthusiastic about working on something, and second of all, it neatly solves the problem of the critics who are unwilling to actually contribute to your project, which is actually a problem that I've noticed in volunteer efforts, that you'll tend to get not just enthusiastic volunteers, but somebody who is convinced you're doing it wrong. But yet, when they tell you you're doing it wrong, they want you to just do what they say rather than, okay, just throw away all these things that you've already worked on, all this money that you've already spent, and do it my way. And when you say, okay, why don't you do all of that? You raise the money, you build the routers, and maybe your network's better. We'll see who wins. However, eventually, you are going to, much like Jason Scott said in his Wikipedia talk, eventually politics and the law and finance and all of these real-world concerns catch up to you. So you're eventually going to be needing to file 501(c) paperwork. You're going to be needing to establish yourself probably as a state corporation. You're going to be needing to budget your money, keep track of your accounts. If there's any taxes that you have to pay, you'll also be needing to get some kind of liability insurance, because if you have a hack space that you're working on this stuff, usually if you're renting, they're going to require that. And also, you're working on roofs. You're going to be, whoever your volunteers are exposed to the possibility of injury. And even if you have, obviously you're going to have safety harnesses and all like that, but if the worst happens, something like that can wipe out your organization without liability insurance. And unfortunately, it's not cheap. Getting down to the individual makeup of your group, the kinds of people you would ideally want to have. First of all, you take who you can get. Whoever shows up, that's your group. Hopefully they do work. If they don't, like I said, use the anarcho-syndicalism model, and eventually the people who don't want to work will stop showing up. It actually works great. You're going to want at least one person who knows systems and network administration for servers, who can manage a server, like for email and web servers, that sort of thing. And someone with web designer skills or website administration skills, that could probably be the same person if they're multi-talented. You'll want one radio, antenna, or physics guru. That was my job in the CU Wireless project and the Detroit project. The person who can soothe people and tell them that, yes, in fact, your antennas are not going to give them cancer. That can figure out do site surveys and figure out the best ways to install your equipment and things like that. You're going to want a team, probably 5 or 6 or so, of people who are generally just interested in installing stuff, who are willing to show up on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon and put the router on the roof, bolt it down, run the cable, that sort of thing. And you're going to want one person, this is very important, these people are worth their weight in gold or whatever else you'd like to give them. One person who is the paperwork geek. In CU Wireless, this was Sasha Meinrath, and we all loved him for this because he was the one that was willing to do all of the work that we weren't. He was, he was perhaps not as interested in the computer side of things as he was the social side of things, and I would really credit him with making CU Wireless, or now it's called Kuwin, as successful as it is because he was able to do all of the work of interfacing us with the rest of the world so that we weren't just a bunch of scruffy hackers. And if you're developing your own software, obviously you'll need people who have the skills for coding and that sort of thing. However, there are a number of software packages out there. There's the CU Wireless Station Boot software. There's Pebble Linux from NYC Wireless. Pyramid. There's even, although I don't really like it, I mean, if you're doing just the access point thing, you could try public IP. It works for some people, but not others. And a whole host of others that keep cropping up. As far as leadership and organizing the club, guess what? If you started it, you're the guy who's the leader. Whether you like it or not, people are going to look to you as the person who's in charge. Eventually, when you get 501(c) status, you're going to need a board of directors by law. They're going to be, and you really want to make sure this is an elected body and that there's clear rules for electing members when a member leaves, because you don't want to get into the problem that, for example, the Detroit Freenet did, which is where the whole board of directors more or less got burned out at once and all resigned except for 2 of them. And then, according to their own bylaws, they didn't have quorum. So they legally couldn't do anything. And that's basically what caused the group to go defunct, is that they couldn't manage their budget. They couldn't make any legal decisions about what to do with their resources. So you want to make sure that if somebody leaves from the board or decides to take a leave of absence or whatever, you fill that spot just in case other people decide to leave. Also, make sure that the board doesn't devolve into a social club. It might be, if you have to pick a place to meet that's public, it might be better to pick a coffee house than a place that serves alcohol. This was a problem with the Detroit project. And it tends to be a problem if you're just meeting to get something done. I mean, everybody likes to meet over pizza and beer, but if you keep doing it all the time, eventually it's more about that and less about building the network. As far as the hardware and software needs of your group, and I'm speaking now about for organizational purposes, it's imperative to have your own server that's co-located someplace so that you have, your website served off of that server, email served off of that server, whatever you're doing, so that you're in control of that. Again, the Detroit group decided to try and do all of this using free services on the web, because you can get, email lists that are served freely on the internet, and web forums that are free on the internet, and comment services like HaloScan and all that are free. But trying to cobble all this together winds up making you look, number one, like you don't know what you're doing. And if you're doing that, you probably don't. And number two, it's brittle and will inevitably fail and wipe out the information that you're trying to store there. So your own server that you can back up, and maybe it's perhaps it's a no-brainer to this group, but that's vital, because that's literally the lifeblood and the core of the group, is your ability to communicate with one another anytime somebody has a good idea. And on the website, just for to show that you're active, you want a node map that you update every time you put a new node up. Every time you do something, you want to show that there's something happening, and that there's always something that that you definitely are an active group, and one that people should want to join and get involved with at some level, whether it's they want to have a node on their house, or they want to join and help build nodes or install them, or help educate people about the benefits of this and that sort of thing. There's all kinds of roles that any volunteer can play.